ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः. So we will continue from where we left last time. The last class wherein we discussed the dialogue is between, in fact, the Brahmo Samaj devotees who have come to see Ramakrishna. So there is a devotee whose name was Ram, and he's telling Sri Ramakrishna that you all know, I have discussed this fact before, that the original Brahmo Samaj, of which Keshav Sen was the leader, was very close to Sri Ramakrishna. But there was a division within Brahmo Samaj because Keshav Chandra Sen had made a rule that whoever becomes a member of Brahmo Samaj, he should not encourage child marriage. You know, those days child marriage was very common. So naturally, he felt, he felt that at least the members of Brahmo Samaj should not encourage the child marriage. Young girls were married to older men, even at the age of 12 or even younger age, they were married. So since he made a rule, he ought to have followed that rule himself. But somehow his own daughter, they got a very nice proposal from one of the wealthiest princes somewhere, I forgot, Kuch Bihar. You know, Kuch Bihar had the prince of Kuch Bihar was slightly older than. So the proposal came, and then Keshav Chandra Sen was unfortunately not able to refuse because there was a lot of pressure from his family that if we let go this proposal, then they were very keen. The other side said, we don't care what rules you have made for yourself. But if you don't agree, we will find somebody else. So he was in a predicament, and then he finally agrees and they marry. And then the whole Brahmo Samaj is split into two because of this. So that was known as Navavidhan. So the Sadharan Brahmo Samaj, there were two divisions. So they felt that if the leader of this Brahmo Samaj himself breaks the rule, maybe it was an exception. If he breaks the rule, then others will also be inspired to do that. Though he gave some explanation why he did it, still Vijay Krishna Goswami, who all of you know, he came and they started a different Brahmo Samaj, different branch of Brahmo Samaj, where they said we don't agree with because you have broken the rules. So they were quarreling, but Sri Ramakrishna was not very keen to enter the quarrels of these two. For him, all were equal. Whoever came, he knew that these are minor things which have to be ignored. And he used to make some fun at their expense. Anyway, there were a lot of discussion was going on in Kolkata in those days, whether one should follow this original Brahmo Samaj or the new branch which had separated over certain issues. So Ram was one of the devotees. So he has come to Sri Ramakrishna, and the discussion is on the Brahmo Samaj. He says, sir, it doesn't seem to me that the Navavidhan, that is Navavidhan was the sect, one sect of Brahmo Samaj, has done much good. Perhaps he was the supporter of the other group. If Keshav Sen had been genuine, why would his devotees come to their present plight? I mean, they came to the present plight partly because of this. There were other issues which resulted in a split. Then Ram is continuing and telling Sri Ramakrishna, according to me, there is no substance in him. So he is criticizing Keshav Chandra Sen, maybe in front of some of his disciples. We do not know, because a lot of people used to come to Sri Ramakrishna. According to me, Ram is saying, there is no substance in him. It is like sounding some broken pieces of earthenware and then locking the door. People would think that there is a lot of money inside. So he's just giving a very crude example. He said, you make a lot of noise, but there's no money inside. And people think that there is a lot of money, but there's no substance. Actually, there are only broken pieces of baked clay. Outsiders do not know what is inside. So he is giving an example. Now, you see Sri Ramakrishna's response. He doesn't judge people like that. Jesus Christ himself said, judge not that ye be not judged. You don't judge people, because if Jesus says clearly, if you judge people, who are you to judge? Let the Lord judge them. Whatever karma they have done, they have done. Why are you, who has given you the authority to judge other people? Why do you judge Keshav Chandra Sen? But he's telling this with some tact, very tactfully. He says, he's not supporting what Keshav has done. Neither is he supporting Shivnath Shastri, who was in the other sect, I mean the other branch of Brahmo Samaj. He says very clearly there is definitely some substance in him. Don't say he's worthless. If not, why would so many people honor him? So he's taking a different point of view. He said, why do you see always harp upon the mistakes people make? That is what his intention is. It's very easy to point out others' mistakes, but why don't you see the positive side, his positive contribution? Otherwise, why would many people honor him? So we know very well that Sri Ramakrishna always used to meet people, anybody who excelled in any field. Maybe he's a musician, or maybe he's a leader, or he's a great scholar. Sri Ramakrishna was very humble and used to go and honor. Then somebody asked, why do you go to such people? They don't care for you, but you seem to go. He had so much humility. Many times he heard of some great person, great scholar. He'll tell Hriday, and Hriday was very arrogant. He said, no, they insult you. They don't even treat you properly. Why should you go there? Why should you go there? But he was so humble. He said, if there is some greatness in some person, then why should we not recognize that? This is the theme of the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is known as Vibhuti Yoga. There the Lord says, Krishna tells Arjuna through all the examples. We have been discussing the Bhagavad Gita on Saturdays. So yesterday only we discussed that somebody asks, Arjuna asks, in fact Arjuna is asking Sri Krishna to show him his true glory. He said, how can I show you the true glory? He does it in the 11th chapter when he shows him the Vishwarupa Darshana. But even that he is not able to understand. He just gets terrified by seeing that form. But before that, he is giving a hint through the different verses of the Vibhuti Yoga that if you see greatness anywhere, in any species, among the animals, among the hills, you take the specimen which is the greatest among that species. Among animals, there is lion. Among the immovables, there is the Himalaya, which is far bigger than all the other peaks that you see in the world, the Mount Everest and all. So when you talk of the Lord's glory, it does not express the Lord's glory fully, all these vibhutis, but he says it partially at least explains why a person should worship the greatest, so that by meditating on the greatest among different species that you see around you, you would be led to the Lord who is far greater. So that is his partial greatness on which you meditate. So that idea Sri Ramakrishna is indirectly giving him. He said, why should so many people honor him? There are many who do not honor for some reason, but that is okay. But why don't you see that so many people honor him? Then he says, why don't people see the greatness of Shivanath? He's talking about the other sect. Unless the Lord wills, greatness is not honored. So this is a very important idea Sri Ramakrishna is giving, which validates the Vibhuti Yoga. When the Lord says, you may say that all people are equal, but it is not true. Some people, or some among all the species, even among their individual species, there are some who excel other in that same species. And Sri Ramakrishna is not discriminating, but he says that is how you go to the Lord. You go to the greatest of the manifested things. There are Vibhuti, it is known as Vibhuti. So you respect Vibhuti wherever it is. If somebody sings well, he went in Banaras when he went, he heard that there is a Veena player who was really good. And Sri Ramakrishna asked, he said, I heard that there is a Veena player who plays excellent Veena, is a classical player. So he asked him to play the Veena, and he was so much engrossed in that music. He said, I could literally see from the notes that came out of the Veena that Saraswati herself was being manifest. So not that the person who was playing the Veena was divine, but he could see that divinity because he always had a positive attitude. So he says it is the Lord's will because of which Keshav is great, whatever greatness you ascribe to him. And Shivnath is great, and all the other people who have these followers and who are great. So why don't you see that? But then he says something which is very significant. He says, why, just as Ram said, there are many people who follow him, but there are many who do not follow. Why does it happen? Then he says, unless a person renounces the world, he can accomplish nothing wonderful, and people do not accept him. That is why the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, everywhere the importance of Tyaga, the importance of renunciation is emphasized. You may be famous, you may get a lot of name and fame, but if you really want to attain the reason why Keshav Chandra Sen doesn't get that kind of following, because everybody knew that he had certain issues, family issues, he had to marry his daughter. So no doubt he was a great scholar, he was the founder of a great sect, but somehow Sri Ramakrishna says, because if he had renounced, then his weight would have carried more weight. Now he is giving the reason. Because he says, people will say he's a householder, he enjoys Kamini and Kanchan secretly, while he tells us that the Lord is only the reality and world is transitory like a dream. Now, he's not referring to just Keshav. He's saying anybody, especially in the Advaita, people have to, Advaita looks very nice when we hear the talks. Most of the Advaitins have to believe right from the beginning that the world is transitory like a dream. It is an illusion. But how many of us can really think that way? So Sri Ramakrishna is saying that unless you are really convinced, you may believe, you may talk of the world as transitory, because everything in the universe, which is part of Prakriti, keeps on changing. The idea behind all the philosophy of Advaita is not that the world is unreal, but it is transitory. If it is unreal, how do we perceive it? But because the moment you try to grasp it, it slips from your grasp. It just vanishes. And it is temporary, it is transient. It is not sustainable. So Advaita tells you, or the philosophy of Vedanta says, that's what Sri Ramakrishna is trying to explain. That on one hand you say the world is transitory like a dream, and then you marry off your daughter at such a young age. And that is why there was a split in the Brahmo Samaj, because others did not take it. He said, how can it be possible? Just because he is a rich person, you married off, you broke all the rules of Brahmo Samaj. So he says he was bound by certain, it was not that he really wanted to do it, but maybe there was a lot of pressure from his family to do that. Otherwise, we can't marry our girl, his daughter. So maybe he had succumbed to pressure, but still, Sri Ramakrishna says, he has some good qualities which you can, and he gets that kind of respect, because with all his mistakes that he has made, he has some good qualities. But he says, unless one has renounced the world completely, his word is not accepted by everybody, even though some worldly people may accept it. See, that is also, that's why these people find some following, because they think that, okay, maybe we can compromise with this because then it justifies our actions. So Keshav lived a householder's life. So naturally, he has to be interested in his family. Sri Ramakrishna is showing, and it's another way of looking at this problem. And then he says, he doesn't say it's totally wrong. He says worldly people have to be protected. If you have accepted the world, then there are certain, it is the swadharma of a householder to protect himself. He says worldly people have to be protected. He has a family, they have to protect them. He lectured a great deal, but he also made full provision for his household. What a son-in-law he had. I entered his house and saw big cots. I mean, he is referring to that prince of Kuch Bihar, whom Keshav's daughter was married. So he says, when you live a householder's life, such luxuries sometimes are natural. If one has willingly accepted the world, then what is, I mean, he's not saying what is wrong. It is a place for sense enjoyment. So you can't expect them to renounce all these things. So Ram then still argues. Ram is a jealous person, perhaps. He did not like that Keshav married his daughter only for money. Then he says, okay, Keshav got this caught. See, that is how the worldly people, they are not bothered about their own spiritual progress. They want to involve themselves in the gossip of what others have done. So Ram still persisting, and he says, Keshav got those cots. I mean, when Sri Ramakrishna said that he has got a luxurious house, he said, no, he got those cots when his ancestors' property was divided. Obviously belonged to a very rich family, Kamal Kutir, which is the place where he lived. Keshav Sen was a huge mansion. So it was his share. Sir, you may say anything. But Vijay Babu told me that Keshav said to him, now he's saying that I want an explanation for what Keshav has been saying to all people. He's saying, Vijay Babu is Vijay Krishna Goswami. He told me that Keshav once said to him that I am a portion of Christ, of Gauranga, Chaitanya Deva. And you should say that you are Advaita. And Advaita is a disciple of Gauranga. Advaita was the name of the disciple. They were like something like spiritual companions. So Vijay Babu is claiming that one day Keshav said to him, that he said to Vijay Krishna Goswami, that you are Advaita reborn and I am an incarnation of Christ of Gauranga. And do you know what he said? That you also belong to Navavidhana, when he is referring to Thakur. The Thakur is also one of that group. So Sri Ramakrishna simply laughs. Then Sri Ramakrishna keeps on laughing and says, I don't know, brother. I don't even know the meaning of Navavidhan. And all laugh. He is simply dismissing it. He is not angry. You see, that's the beauty of Sri Ramakrishna. So then he says, he is trying to tell him, okay, if he says that, it's fine, it's his opinion. But as far as I am concerned, I don't even know the meaning of what this Navavidhan is. And everybody laughs. They understand what he's trying to point out. Then Ram says, Keshav's disciples have said that he has harmonized Jnana and Bhakti. Then Sri Ramakrishna appears to be surprised now, because when it comes to ideology, when it comes to personal life, he is not so particular. He just laughs it off. But when some wrong idea is given, and then he says Keshav has harmonized Jnana and Bhakti, maybe in his philosophy, the philosophy of Brahmo Samaj, Sri Ramakrishna surprisingly says, how is that, brother? Then what does the Adhyatma Ramayana contain? You see, now we have to understand that Sri Ramakrishna, we normally think that he was illiterate. He was, in fact, he could not read and write. He didn't even go to school. But when he was asked, how do you quote from so many scriptures? Then he said, see, I might not have read books, but I have heard so much. There were innumerable people coming to Dakshineshwar. And he had a tremendous memory. He had a wonderful memory. Whatever he heard, he used to very attentively listen, and whatever he listened once, he used to remember. So he says, I might not have read, but how much have I heard? So he could quote, his memory was so phenomenal that he says, what does Adhyatma Ramayana? Now that is one of the books he used to keep in his small library. He could not read it, but if Naren or Vivekananda or somebody came, he said, why don't you take this book? There are specific books for specific disciples. He never allowed the people who followed the path of bhakti to read Adhyatma Ramayana, because Adhyatma Ramayana is full of jnana. So he says, how is it possible? What does the Adhyatma Ramayana contain? Is giving the right quote, the right example from this Adhyatma Ramayana. Narada began to sing a hymn of praise to Ramchandra. That is how, see, there's a difference between Valmiki's Ramayana and Adhyatma Ramayana. Adhyatma Ramayana gives us, it's a Advaitic text, where that's the beauty of Vedanta, that you accept Rama as an incarnation, that is the path of bhakti, but at the same time, the inner meaning of Ramayana is explained in a book known as Adhyatma Ramayana. It is Advaitic text. So there, the same Narada, the same Ramchandra, everything, the story is almost the same. But through the conversations, they show how symbolically, we are not speaking of an incarnation, we are speaking of the Supreme Brahman. So, Narada is singing a praise in Adhyatma Ramayana, which Sri Ramakrishna is quoting. So, he has remembered. Whenever Naren used to come, that is Swami Vivekananda, he said, why don't you read a little to me? Because he could not read himself, or perhaps he was not so good at reading. So, he used to ask Naren to read. And when some others came, those who are full of bhakti, he will ask him to stop. He said, that is not for you, it is for Naren. So he knew who is, among the disciples, who has what kind of capacity. And based on that, he used to. So during the course of conversation, he is telling, because most of these Brahmos claim that they don't believe in a form. Brahmo Samaj, it's a mixture of Upanishads, a mixture of some Sufi ideas, Islamic ideas, a little of Christianity. So it was a combination of all these ideas put together, and they used to believe in a God which was formless. They did not believe in Murti Puja. In fact, if somebody went to a temple to pray, they have told their members, including Swami Vivekananda and Brahmananda, when they first went, they refused to go to the Kali temple to bow down. It was considered to be breaking a rule, if important rule of Brahmo Samaj, if you went and bowed down before an idol. So they believed that you should not worship idols. Of course, Sri Ramakrishna used to make a lot of fun. One of the instances is, one day he was invited to a Brahmo gathering, and they were saying, oh, the Lord, they believe in a formless Lord. They do not know what shape he has. Then they used to say in the prayers, of course, the Brahmo prayers are mostly Bengali. So Sri Ramakrishna was just listening like a child. And these people were praising the Lord, saying, oh, he is the infinite, formless Lord, and he's full of compassion. Then Sri Ramakrishna said, oh, how do you say? Because if he doesn't have a form, a human being can have compassion. If he is not a human, if he doesn't have a human form, then where does the compassion come from? You can't say the air is full of compassion. It's a quality which human beings have. So it's a contradiction in terms. So Sri Ramakrishna was so incisive in his thinking. So he used to catch them at the right time and the right place. But without any, he never antagonized somebody, but he spoke the truth. So he says, now you are saying that Keshav has harmonized Jnana and Bhakti, but in the Adhyatma Ramayana, Narada sings a hymn in the praise of Ramchandra, saying, O Rama, you are the same Supreme Brahman that the Vedas talk of. That is the impersonal God. You have been living with us as a human being, and though you look like a man, in reality, you are not a human being. You are that Supreme Brahman. Now, this is a high philosophy. They are trying to interpret Ramayana, Valmiki's Ramayana, where Rama is not only human with the human qualities, but he has none of, they are all symbolic. And he is the same reality as Supreme Brahman, which the Vedas speak of. So, Ramchandra then said, Narada, I am extremely pleased with your interpretation. Please ask for a boon. Then Narada said, Rama, what boon can I ask? Grant that I may have pure bhakti for your lotus feet, and may you not enchant me with your world bewitching Maya. So the Adhyatma Ramayana contains only Jnana and Bhakti. So he says, it's not that all the texts preach only one idea. He's giving an example. You say Keshav has combined, he's preaching Bhakti from the Bhakti scriptures and Jnana from this. But Adhyatma Ramayana, in essence, contains both Jnana and Bhakti. Otherwise, why is he praying to Rama? If he is the Supreme Brahman, then where is the lotus feet? Why should he have pure Bhakti for the lotus feet? And that he needs that because within the purview of Prakriti, this Maya acts. So he doesn't want, he wants Rama's help. Rama as a god or as a avatara. Narada is praying to him in the same scripture where he compares Rama with Supreme Brahman. So where is the question of grace? But when he comes as an incarnation, even though it is untrue or even it is transient, he needs the support of that same Rama who is Parabrahma, who has Parabrahma Swarupa, but he has come as an incarnation, and because of he has descended to that level for my sake, I will have, by having bhakti at his lotus feet, that will help me to cross the ocean of samsara and I will not be caught in the meshes of Maya. So now the conversation turns on Amruta, a disciple of Keshav. Now, after this was explained by Sri Ramakrishna, Ram is trying to explain certain other things about some other disciples of Keshav. He says Amrut Babu has become a quite different person. Sri Ramakrishna said, yes, I saw him rather sick the other day. But his meanings, he wanted to convey something else. Not that because of sickness he has become a different person. There is some change in his behavior. So Ram is trying to sort of not complain, but just tell what has happened to this Amrut Babu, who was a disciple of Keshav Sen. Sir, let me tell you about his lecture. The moment the drum is sounded, they all say victory to Keshav. Didn't you say Dal? Dal means, in Bengali, Dal means a group. Didn't you say that the Dal is formed in small shallow pits of stagnant water? Sri Ramakrishna used to often give this example. He said, if the water is flowing, then you get fresh water. But if you are dogmatic and you believe only these truths are true, the truths of my religion are true, so you're not creative, you don't accept other religions as true, other ideas as also equally true, then you are like that stagnant water. The flowing water accepts everything. It accepts everything on its way. That's why it remains fresh and you can drink that. But if you are fanatic and form a dal in the sense it's like a small sect, it's like a shallow pit of stagnant water. So Ram is reminding Sri Ramakrishna, you see, he has also started a dal. They all say victory to Keshav, victory to Keshav. I mean, he somehow is going on complaining against this. Perhaps he is not happy with Keshav Sen. Anyway, one day Amrut Babu said in his lecture, the holy man, meaning Sri Ramakrishna, says, so he's saying, he's even criticizing you. He says that sects are formed in small pits. But brother, one needs these sects. One definitely needs them. I tell you the truth, they are indeed needed. So all are laughing. So he says, he's twisting what you have said, though you always said that we don't want water to stagnate anywhere. You should not never be uh, dogmatic in your own beliefs. You should be liberal. Joto mat, toto path. That is the idea of Sri Ramakrishna. But even in spite of that, Ram is complaining to Sri Ramakrishna that this Amrut Babu, in his lecture, he says even Ramakrishna believes. I mean, he's quoting him wrongly. And he says even one needs these sects. I tell you the truth, they are indeed needed. I mean, Sri Ramakrishna had just said that these sects exist. Joto Moth. Moth means sect. Toto Path, there are different, but he doesn't say that they are necessary. They are there, you can't avoid them. There are sects. There are fanatic people. There are narrow dogmatic people. You can't avoid. But he didn't say they are necessary. But here he is misquoting Sri Ramakrishna. And he is trying to support the view of Brahmo Samaj, this Amrut Babu. And while preaching, Ram is telling, see, and everybody laughs because Sri Ramakrishna says, I never said that. But anyway, he just doesn't take it. But then he adds a comment. He says, what is this? Shame, shame. What a lecture. I mean, what is he? Why is he quoting me wrongly? Now, the topic changes. Sri Ramakrishna just mentions this and he just ignores it. Now, the topic of discussion is that some people like to praise their leader. So, Sri Ramakrishna now is giving an example. The musical play of Nimai Sannyasa, the renunciation of Sri Chaitanya, was to be enacted at Keshav's house. Of course, they used to have a lot of cultural activities. In those days, Girish Chandra Ghosh started theatre. There were some really good actors and actresses. Even the role of Chaitanya sometimes would be played by a female actor because it was very difficult and they were very good actors. Keshav wrote some beautiful dramas. So there is a drama which he wrote, Nimai Sannyasa, the Sannyasa of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is a very important event in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Sri Ramakrishna says, one day I was, a drama was enacted, musical play. Most of Girish Ghosh's plays were musical. They, just to break the monotony, there would be a drama and then in between either some background song would, or the singer, the actor himself or herself would sing. Some of them were very good singers. So that play was to be enacted at Keshav's house, that is Kamal Kutir, and I was invited to it. Sri Ramakrishna was invited. That day I heard somebody called Keshav and Pratap Chandra Mazumdar. He was also a representative to the Parliament of Religions. In fact, he was the one who spread rumors against Swami Vivekananda. He was so jealous. He was a very good friend actually, because along with Keshav, he used to come, Pratap Chandra Mazumdar. But somehow, when Swami Vivekananda became famous in Chicago after the Parliament of Religions, Pratap, who represented the Brahmo Samaj, suddenly sided with the Christian missionaries and spread all sorts of wrong things about Vivekananda. So no doubt Swamiji was very much upset because he considered Pratap to be a very good friend. But somehow jealousy sometimes can overpower a person. And of course, later he regretted when he came back to Kolkata. But at that time, seeing that he became more popular, and though Pratap Chandra Mazumdar was a very good speaker, and in fact, he had written a small biography of Ramakrishna, they all deeply loved him because he used to come with Keshav. So then Sri Ramakrishna is making fun because one day he heard somebody saying that Keshav and Pratap, that is Pratap Chandra Mazumdar, are like Gaur and Nitai. Prasanna then asked me what I was. I noticed that Keshav was looking at me to see what I would reply. Keshav definitely liked the praise that was that he was being praised. Who doesn't like praise? I mean, if somebody says you are an incarnation of Chaitanya, Gaur and Nitai have come as Keshav and Pratap, there are sycophants who praise their leaders just to get their favor. But Sri Ramakrishna was very humble, and Keshav was a little embarrassed because he knew Sri Ramakrishna is watching all this drama and the disciples are praising him. Then Keshav was just looking, how will Sri Ramakrishna react now? Then Sri Ramakrishna very simply, very humbly said, I don't know, I am the servant of the servants of your servant. I am the dust of dust. So Keshav laughed and said, oh, he can never be caught. Means Keshav appreciated this quality in Sri Ramakrishna, though he kept quiet when his disciples were praising him as the incarnation of Gaur and Nitai. Keshav laughed and accepted that you can never catch Sri Ramakrishna unawares. He can never be caught. Means no matter how much you praise him, he is not going to be moved by that. He will just say that he is the humblest servant of the servants of your servant. So what more could they say? He said, I don't know all these things. I am just a simple person. Now, Ram then adds, because he is now keen to somehow criticize Keshav. Then he says something else, which is still more funny. He says, Keshav sometimes used to say that you are John the Baptist. Now, what connection? A devotee then adds, and sometimes he would say that you are Chaitanya Deva of the 19th century. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, I don't know what they mean. What does that mean? So he's just trying to find out. The devotee is trying to explain. It means Chaitanya Deva has incarnated again in the 19th century and you are he. That is what Keshav means. Sri Ramakrishna became very indifferent. He said, please leave it alone. But tell me, now you see how he is showing his humility. He had just fallen and fractured his hand. So he just to distract them from this discussion, Sri Ramakrishna is pointing out a defect which he has now. He says, leave it alone, all these discussions, whether I am Chaitanya, but now tell me how can I set my hand right? It is fractured. My only care now is to see that my hand is cured. So Sri Ramakrishna somehow very cleverly avoids this topic because he knows these people have their own opinion. And he says, fine, that is your problem. You consider anybody to be Gaur, anybody to be Chaitanya, Nitai. Why should it bother me? And he just diverts the topic. Now, the topic changes. Now, there was enough of criticism by this Ram and these devotees. But Sri Ramakrishna very tactfully changes the topic. And then he says, he refers to Trailokya. Trailokya was a great singer, Brahmo singer. And Sri Ramakrishna loved him very much because he was a very humble person and he sang wonderfully the name of the Lord in devotional songs, though many of the songs that are ascribed or that are dedicated to a god with form were discouraged. Brahmo Sangeet is separate. They have their own songs. But Keshav was a bit liberal, and Keshav's society, they used to invite this Trailokya, who of course sang Brahmo songs, but also sang beautiful songs on Krishna and other personal god. Then Sri Ramakrishna, now because something positive is being discussed, he says, how beautifully Trailokya sings. Now Ram is still criticizing. Now he can't even stand the praise. The topic has changed to Trailokya. He says, Ram says, how are all his songs all right? Sri Ramakrishna says, yes, all right. Otherwise, why do his songs attract my mind so much? So he is not giving up because he really sang from the bottom of his heart. He was not superficial. He saw the faith that Trailokyanath had. In fact, most of the songs, if you see in the gospel, they were sung by Trailokya. Sri Ramakrishna used to tell him, why don't you sing this song or that song? And then he used to go into Samadhi. Then Ram says, still Ram is not forgiving, trying to criticize this Trailokya Babu. He has some deep-seated anger against, that is what we see from these conversations. He says, what is there? He has composed all the songs in the bhava, that attitude that he has borrowed from you. I mean, he's trying to say, after all, he has borrowed these ideas and composed some songs and he's singing that. Keshav used to describe these very attitudes at the time of performing worship. Trailoka Babu would then compose the songs in the same mode. So just he is singing a song, a sample song. It is a fair of joy in the mart of love. How Hari is sporting merrily with the devotees. So he's just giving an example how he has copied the songs of other composers. And he would compose and pass it off as a Brahmo song. You enjoy yourself in the company of devotees. Noticing this, he has composed all his songs in the same mood. So, Sri Ramakrishna laughs. Please don't torment me anymore. Why do you want to involve me in all that? So everybody laughs. Now Sri Ramakrishna is getting irritated with this fellow. Please don't torment me, means don't bother me with all this criticism. Leave me at peace. Don't involve me in all these things. So you see, even remotely, Sri Ramakrishna used to detest, though it is the truth that many of the things were distorted. Of course, when serious distortions took place in some teaching, then he used to give them a piece of his mind. But if somebody was unnecessarily criticized because of his limitations, Sri Ramakrishna did not like that. He used to have that attitude that everybody has some deficiency, some defect. Why don't you see the positive side? Why can't you see the good things that they do? Why do you always attack somebody personally? But of course, when it came to certain quotations, if somebody said that Sri Ramakrishna said this, or he said something which he had not said, then he would get angry. Or angry in the sense he would correct him. Because that involved a central teaching of the Vedas, Vedanta, and all the other scriptures. So you can't mess with that. You can criticize people if you want, but don't mess with the central teachings of the scriptures. That would be misguiding the people, and you have to pay a price for that. So Girindra was sitting there. He is now, they have all come to criticize the Brahmo Samaj now. The Brahmo devotees say, they're trying to, you see, some people get a lot of joy by criticizing other people in front of somebody who will take their criticism sincerely and praise them. But they don't understand Sri Ramakrishna is not of that mentality. So Girindra, after hearing all these things, you should remember that Sri Ramakrishna is so patient with all these critics. And that is why they have got the guts to even say. Girindra comes, is another person who hates the Brahmo Samaj. He says the Brahmo devotees say that the Paramahamsa Deva lacks the faculty of organization. Now Sri Ramakrishna, like a child, says, what does that mean? I mean, he is not bothered. If somebody says that he doesn't have the faculty of organization, people would get angry. He said, why does he say that? But Sri Ramakrishna says, what does that mean? I don't understand. I don't have the faculty of. M says, M was sitting there. He thought enough is enough. Now, he wants to explain to Sri Ramakrishna. You see, they are going to such an extent, they say. He says that you don't know how to form and run an organization. That is what they are saying. That means they want to indirectly say you are not intelligent enough. That's what they say. So all laugh. So Sri Ramakrishna, instead of getting angry, he just tells Ram, oh, very nice. I don't have the faculty of organization. Now please tell me why my hand broke. Please stand up and lecture on this topic. I mean, he's taunting. If people who are intelligent, they have understood what Sri Ramakrishna is trying to convey. He says, you people lecture on worthless topics. Now, you please tell me why my hand broke. Perhaps you will stand and give a lecture on this topic. And all laugh because he didn't want to antagonize him. Perhaps Ram might not have understood what he is hinting at. But if he was intelligent enough, he would have understood. Means you talk on such silly topics as how the hand broke, why it broke. As Bhagwan Buddha used to say, he used to say that when people asked him questions about the existence of God or the non-existence of God. What do you believe in? He said, why are you bothered about all these things? He used to give an example of a arrow. He says, suppose an arrow has come from somewhere. You don't know from where it has come, and it has struck you. You are in pain. So Buddha gave a wonderful logic. He said, what will you do first? The first thing you would do is remove that arrow, because that is causing so much pain. Will you go to find out with that arrow in your body where the arrow has come from and who has hit it? I'll see. And all those things you won't do, because you are in pain. Solve your problem by removing the arrow first. Then if you have time, try to find out. So Sri Ramakrishna here is trying to tell Ram in a very subtle way. Now you will ask me, please tell me, give a lecture on how my hand broke. Instead of giving a solution to reduce the pain, you will just give a big lecture. Will it help me? So he says, please stand up and lecture on this topic. Now that's what you all can do. So now he continues. Now he is a bit serious. He said, there is enough jokes now. You have been criticizing continuously, and we are not coming to any serious topic. Because Sri Ramakrishna was very, very shrewd. Shrewd in the sense he was very particular that after a certain time he would come back to the idea that God realization is the only goal of life. He would discuss secular matters, make some fun. That's okay. There was a lot of jokes going on. Especially he would use these jokes to show the foolishness with which the worldly people approach the idea of spirituality. But at the same time, when it came to serious discussions, he would be very, very serious. He would not tolerate any kind of mediocrity or any kind of trivial, casual conversations. Then he comes to the point now. He says the Brahmos insist that the God they worship is formless. Let them say so. He says, I'm not against that. It is enough to call on him sincerely. If you are sincere in what you believe, then he says, he means the Supreme Lord, whether he is with form, without form, or with both with and without form, you don't bother your head. But he is one thing for sure. He is the Antaryami. Antaryami literally means one who controls your destiny and controls the whole world by being in the center of your consciousness. So he is the Antaryami. He will make you know, make you understand what his real nature is. You don't have to bother. You don't have to give a talk on that. He is the Antaryami. If you are sincere enough, call him with whatever name you like. You call him formless, you call him with form, it doesn't matter. But are you sincere in what you believe? If you are sincere, then only he is the Antaryami, will teach you what is right, what is wrong. What is wrong, even if you are wrong, the Antaryami will give you at the right time, he'll explain to you what is wrong with your approach. So, yet, he says, it is not good to say that only what you know of him is right and what others claim are wrong. That since we take him as formless, he is formless for Brahmos. Can't he have form? How can you conclude? Or that he has a form and so he cannot be formless? Can man reach the end of God? Can you explain? Does he have the capacity to understand what God is? Then he says, in the same way, the Vaishnavas, the Shaktas, they keep on opposing each other. They criticize so much so that there is a joke that Vaishnavas, who of course obviously think that Krishna is the supreme manifestation of the Lord, Krishna to Bhagavan Swayam. To counter that, the Shaktas say, oh my God, our mother is far superior, the Divine Mother is far superior than your Krishna, because she doesn't do all. Krishna may be saving the world, he may be the preserver, because she doesn't have to bother. She employs Krishna to preserve the world. So he is far inferior. So that is how they went on quarreling. for generations together. So Sri Ramakrishna says, the Vaishnavas will say, he is our Keshav, he is our Krishna. Keshav means Krishna. Keshav is another name, not Keshav Chandra Sen. Keshav is another name of Krishna, Keshava. The Shakta says he is our Bhagavati. He means the Supreme Lord is our Bhagavati. She alone can give liberation. So they are opposed to each other. I took Vaishnava Charan. Now this he is referring to one wonderful incident that happened when Mathur Babu was alive. He says, I took Vaishnava Charan to Mathur Babu. Vaishnava Charan is a man of discrimination. By discrimination, we mean Viveka. Not the discrimination as in racial discrimination between black and white, not that. This discrimination means it is also a word is being used now. They don't use the word discrimination. For a Western person, it is very confusing. So if Vaishnava Charan is a man of discrimination, they think he discriminates between rich and poor. That is discrimination according to the modern, but discernment, trying to find out what is true, what is false. Viveka. Viveka is the right word. So he says Vaishnava Charan was a man of great discrimination and great learning, but he was a rigid Vaishnava. On the other hand, Mathur Babu was a devotee of Bhagavati, Devi. He was a Shakta, Mathur Babu. They were having a nice conversation when Vaishnava Charan said, only Krishna gives liberation. Only Keshava can give us liberation. No sooner did Mathur Babu hear these words, than his face flushed with anger. He said, my foot was he, all laughed. Was he, Mathur, not a Shakta, worshipper of Shakti? It was natural for him to react that way. He said, my divine mother will give mukta. Why do I need your Krishna to do that? So in the meantime, Sri Ramakrishna says, I tried to distract because they were trying to fight each other. So he tried to distract Vaishnava Charan by changing the topic. So he says, I see that all those who harp on religion are actually quarreling among themselves. The Hindus, the Mohammedans, the Brahmos, the Shaktas, the Vaishnavas, the Shaivites are all quarreling with each other. They haven't gained the intelligence to understand that he who has called Krishna is Shiva, and also the power, the Divine Mother, and also the Divine Mother. They are all same. He is the same being who is known as Christ or Allah, and then he quotes in a Hindi, Ek Ram Hajar Naam. There is a Tulsidas has quoted that. So Sri Ramakrishna remembered this and says, there is but one Rama, Ek hi Ram Hajar Naam, or something like that. And he is known by 1,000 names. There is one substance, it is called by different names. Then he gives that famous example, which is engraved on the wall of, in Belur Math, we have this beautiful thing, this idea of Sri Ramakrishna in a sketch form. There is a beautiful sketch. There he says everybody is asking for the same one substance. A pond has a number of ghats. The Hindus draw water from one ghat and filling their brass pots, they call it jal. The Mohammedans take water from another ghat and fill their skin bags, they call it pani. While the Christians take water from the third ghat and call it water. So this is through parables, is to explain simple, great truths through simple parables. So when a person, he continues, when a person that the substance is not jal but pani, or it is not pani but water, or not water but jal, it becomes ridiculous. That is why the reason why there are so many different groups, ill will and quarrels, resorting to fights with staves and scuffling and killing in the name of religion is not good. Everybody is going towards God. When one is sincere and follows one's path faithfully and yearns for him, he attains him. Then he tells Mani. Mani is nothing. Mani is the Master Mahasaya or Mahendranath Gupta. He is telling Mani, listen to this. You see, sometimes Sri Ramakrishna used to draw the attention. Of course, Mani was a great listener. Mani or M. He used several different names. But he was very sharp, and he was a very good, he could take notes shorthand and then go and expand them. He never forgot, to note any, he was such a nice listener. So, but still, when some important points came, he will ask. He's speaking in general, and Master Masha has recorded everything. That's why we have this gospel, Kathamrita. But sometimes he wanted to confirm that Master's attention is there. He might miss out this portion. Then he says, listen to this. The Vedas, the Puranas, the Tantras, all these religious texts seek him alone and no one else, whom the Vedas call Satchidananda, Brahman, the Tantras call Satchidananda, Shiva, and the Puranas called Satchidananda, Krishna. Sri Ramakrishna has heard that Ram sometimes cooks his own meal in his home. Now, he's just giving some examples. So, he's telling Mani, do you cook for yourself sometimes? It's not changing the topic, but he's asking M. Mani means M says, no, sir, because he perhaps depended on his wife for all the cooking. Then suddenly, maybe it looks out of context, but he says, look here, put a little cow's ghee in your meals. You'll feel your body and mind becoming very pure. So in between, you'll find that some such hints, something struck him. Intuitively, he looked at Master Mashe. Perhaps he was developing some kind of rajas or tamas. So he said, if you want to make your mind sattvic, use a little bit of cow's ghee. It's very well known that cow's ghee is used. Now, they have been talking a long time about Ram's household life. This Ram was going on talking about all this, criticizing. His father was a staunch Vaishnava, and Sridhar, that is Sri Krishna, was worshipped in his house daily. His father, Ram's father, had married a second time. And when Ram was very young, perhaps the father and the stepmother lived with Ram, but Ram was not happy living with his stepmother. She is now 40. Ram is sometimes cross with his father because of his stepmother. That is the topic of conversation. Now we understand why Ram is so negative in his life. He had a very difficult childhood. And as M has observed, M also perhaps, M has that knack of trying to find out the background of the people who are asking questions. Now, why is he so negative? Because there is some ill will in his house. Maybe he doesn't like the stepmother because his father is married and he belonged to an earlier mother. So he was not very happy, and that unhappiness is reflecting in his negative attitude. He sees everything is bad, the world is bad, everybody is bad. Ram himself says, he is not even sparing his own father. He says, my father is not the good man that he was earlier. Even he is bringing his own family affairs and discussing it here. He has become is so much negative now. Sri Ramakrishna then makes fun or jokes and says to the devotees, do you hear this fellow? His father is not good, but he is. He criticizes his father and he thinks he is good. But Ram still doesn't understand that Sri Ramakrishna is poking. But you see his patience. Sri Ramakrishna going on listening to his criticism. There is no peace when she means his stepmother, comes to the house. Something unfortunate is bound to happen. Our household is breaking apart. I say it would be better for her to go and live with her parents. Then Girindra listens to Ram and said, why don't you keep your wife at her father's house in the same way? Means everybody, he jokes. Girindra also is irritated now. Why are you asking your stepmother to go and live? Will you keep your wife at your father's house in the same way? And Sri Ramakrishna, still you see the wonderful patience of Sri Ramakrishna. He gives another example. He says, he smiles and says, are they like pots and pans, that the pot be here and the lid somewhere else? Shiva here and Shakti there? I mean, he just dismisses it and says, are they like pots and pans? The pot can be here and the lid. It is not possible. The pot, the you can't keep these things. The lid has to be on the in its proper place. So in a way, he's joking that how can Shiva be here and Shakti there? I mean, this is ridiculous. But anyway, Ram says we are living happily indeed. But when she comes to the house, our family life falls apart. Then Sri Krishna is making fun. Not fun, he's giving some serious advice. If you have a problem, why can't you build a house for them elsewhere? Problem is with you. This is another way. So he's trying to give a solution. Give them their monthly expenses. Parents are big gurus. Rakhal once asked me whether he could eat from the plate his father had used. I said, what are you saying? What has happened to you that you can't eat from your father's plate? But this is a fact that those who are real devotees, they do not give their leftover food to anyone, not even to dogs. So anyway, that is another context, but he's trying to tell Ram that if the problem is yours, you stay separately. Why do you keep on criticizing that the wife has to go away? If you can't adjust, you go away and make provision for them to live somewhere else and give their monthly expenses. Because they have supported you, it's your duty to support. So we'll conclude now. We are running short of time. If there are some questions, you can ask. Otherwise, I will conclude with the pranam mantra. Today we started on time, so it's just 8. Shall I conclude? Okay. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.